About it, apart from the fact that it's so stiff and strong and light, is the smooth finish on it. It's lovely when you're shipping the pole in and out. I'm using the match top 2 with the pole today, and you might want to check out the pole and all the spares that are available on our website. We decided to sell the pole as a standard 13 metre without any spare kits, so that the customer can add whatever they want in terms of a spares package. So all the pricing of the different top kits and sections and extensions are available online. That bream was fighting really hard. I thought it might have been a hybrid, but I don't think so. It's a lovely bream, around about £2, but he gave me a good runabout. One great thing about the pole is we supply mini extensions for them, and I find them brilliant when you're fishing on a canal like this and switching between lines. Just means you can be really positive when you're holding the pole and not run the risk of damaging it. And there's another nice bream from my right hand swim. That one's really dark in comparison to the others. Lots of them have been those lovely bronze bream, but that one's quite a bit darker. Don't know if that's because it's an older fish or just a different strain, but it's got a few battle scars, that one as well, so perhaps it is a bit of an older fish. Well, neglected or not, you've got to say, canals are just absolutely fantastic, and what a beautiful spot this is. And what's even better is I've got the whole stretch to myself. Well, I mentioned about the fact that I'm using a positive rig in terms of the shotting pattern and presentation, and I'll just quickly show you now. So I'll just let that float settle, and you can see that the bulk has settled, and now that number 9 dropper has settled, so the float now is perfectly dotted down. If I put another section on and just push that rig up the shelf, I think we'll see that when the number 9 dropper is on the bottom, the float obviously settles higher in the water, so you can see most of the bristle now is out the water. And I love fishing with rigs like this when I'm on a canal, particularly where you've got a real slope like this and where you're switching between different lines, because straight away now I know that I'm fishing more than 6 inches over depth, so I'd probably want to come back and adjust my shot and my float accordingly. So this is what I'm talking about with the positive rig. So it's a 0.4 rig, and I've shotted with number 9 shot to make this sort of spread out bulk. So that's going to get the bait down quite quickly. And then I've got one number 9 as a dropper, and that's about 6 inches from the hook. So obviously when that dropper's off the bottom, my float is dotted perfectly. But when that's on the bottom, the float will sit more proud out of the water. And I think that's a great rig. I mean, to be honest, I thought I was only going to catch 1 or 2 fish on it, but I've kept catching, so I've kept using it. And I've got some lighter rigs that we'll perhaps need to use later, which I'll explain in a bit more detail as well. So let's have a look at the rigs that I've set up for today. As I mentioned, that so far I haven't had to try the others, but this was the float I started on. It's a 0.4 pattern. It's a homemade float, and you can notice that it's got a body shape that's quite pronounced, a bit like an egg really, and that's a good pattern for particularly when the canal's flowing. And as I mentioned earlier, 0.4 is a positive really, a rig for this depth of water. You'll notice that I've got a good diameter hollow tip on it, and that's proved really critical today to help spot bites and, you know, read the bites and ignore the line bites. And I've got a carbon stem on that float, which has worked really well. The main line is 0.16mm, which has a breaking strain of around about 5 pounds. So again, pretty heavy really for what you'd expect on the canal, but given how well it's fished and the stamp of the fish, I've been happy to keep that going. And the hook I've used is a size 14 Census 3180BZ, which is a decent sized gape and a strong enough wire to play these bonus bream without any problem. So the other rigs I set up were sort of in the thinking that the fish might become harder to catch as the session progressed, and also to sort of chase them up the shelf. But one interesting thing I'll just quickly show you is, obviously when I've plumbed the depth, I've marked the depths on my pole, and that's the shallower depth where I'm fishing further up the pole, up the bank rather, so sort of 11 to 13 meters deep. And then you can see the difference. It's got to be a foot or more in just a meter's distance back. So when I'm fishing in the deeper swim, I'm obviously adjusting my float. But I've marked that on all my top kits, so all the floats can interchange between the different lines. And this pattern here is a 0.2. I've gone for a more slim design body. Obviously I was going to think that I needed to perhaps present the bait a bit better, and I'd gone for a smaller hook on that. In this case that's a 20 B560 hook, and I was using an 0.8 hook length. But I haven't had to use it today in this unbelievable session. And the other two are just different variations on that theme. So I've got a 0.1 and a 0.3, and it just enabled me to use different hook lengths and hooks. So I've got one set up with a 4 elastic and one with a 5. And there you go. I didn't need them today, I shouldn't have bothered. Well, amazingly, I've managed to keep catching the bream, and I think I've got 12 bream now, plus a couple of hybrids and skimmers. And the sort of feeding pattern of catching a couple of fish and then topping up with a ball of ground bait and alternating between the swims has worked really well. It's just amazing, really. I'm just waiting for the bubble to burst, and I just can't believe what's happening. But I was expecting obviously to catch a few fish first and then perhaps have to follow them up the shelf and under the cover, but at the moment the fish are, well, they're just feeding so confidently. We've only had those 2 boats, so I think that's helped. And I've had, what an amazing day. I just took this one on corn, and I didn't feed any corn initially, but I've started adding a bit of corn to the feed, as well as the castors and dead pinkies, and corn can be such a great target bait when you're catching bream, so that one certainly took a fancy to it. Got to be 2 to 3 pound, that one. It's been an amazing session, this. We maybe slowed up a little bit, we had 2 or 3 boats, but I can't complain. I'm still catching these beautiful bream, and I think we're going to make this the last fish. I'm a bit worried about keeping any more fish in the net, to be honest. It sounds crazy really, but it just shows what an amazing natural venue this is. And what a fantastic way to end a truly memorable session here on the Grand Union Canal at Tunnel Barn. Well, how about this for an amazing net of canal bream? I'm not going to bring them out for a catch shot because there's simply too many and I don't want to damage them, but I've had over 20 bream, some hybrids and skimmers, so I must have well over 60 pound in weight.